This program explores integrative approaches intended to support, not replace, conventional medical care. The information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Always consult your physician or qualified healthcare provider regarding any medical condition or treatment decisions. Welcome to the Dr. K Show. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, naturopathic doctor, author, and founder of the Karlfeldt Center. This is where science meets consciousness and where we explore the ideas transforming health, purpose, and human potential. Each week, I sit down with leading scientists, visionary thinkers, and pioneers shaping the future of medicine and awareness. And now, let's step into today's conversation. Well, this is absolute pleasure to have Dr. John Lewis with me today. And I mean, we're going to be talking about some extremely fascinating things that a lot of people really aren't aware of. And so I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let Dr. Lewis be kind of the driving force. But explain to me a little bit. I mean, you've done so much research, published articles, and written book. And tell me a little bit about who you are and what you've done.
Thank you, Dr. Karlfeldt, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and share with you a little bit of my story today. I'm a physiologist by training. I took an interest in nutrition and exercise a very long time ago, really more on a personal level initially. I got into drug-free competitive bodybuilding as a college student, and I realized pretty quickly that I was not going to make a living as a bodybuilder, and I definitely was not willing to take the drugs and potentially have long-term side effects from that. So, but what bodybuilding did for me though was it changed my attitude about food, and it changed me from what the typical person's perspective is related to just you're hungry, you get something to eat that tastes good to you, and you just keep moving, right? Like that's I think the typical attitude of most people. For bodybuilding, of course, it's a completely different story. You have to have a very regimented, structured, almost like professional approach to your eating. I mean, if you want to do anything, certainly. And so I give bodybuilding credit for at least that much in my life. And then as I got started in my academic career and I began running some clinical trials in nutrition and dietary supplements and exercise, I had the great fortune of meeting a gentleman by the name of Dr. Reg McDaniel, and I'm sure you know Dr. Reg, given your past history with Manatech. Dr. Reg is just what a phenomenal man that guy is. I mean, what a brain, like just a walking encyclopedia of knowledge of pathology, biochemistry, physiology, genetics, nutritional science, just all, how does one brain, have all of that information in it? Just an incredible man, and really, I feel like is the person most responsible for changing not only my career, but actually my life and why I'm even talking to you this evening, simply due to the fact that as soon as he and I met, he started telling me about sugars from aloe vera. And I'm like, what? It's like you think of aloe vera as a topical solution for a sunburn or a cut or a wound, something like that, which is certainly true. But he's telling me about all these success stories that he's had with his colleagues, mostly at Texas A&M at the vet school, where they'd conducted all this research in animals and some human studies too. But up to that point, telling me about all these incredible responses that he was seeing. Now he's documented something like 800 different health challenges in his career and still going strong, by the way. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to him lately, but still goes to his office every day, still fighting the good fight like you and I are, looking to help people with nutrition. And he just completely blew my mind about these polysaccharides, these complex sugars from aloe vera. And so one thing led to another as he and I were getting to know each other, and he happened to be giving a lecture at a seminar one day, and he was talking about working with the polysaccharides with people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And there happened to be a lady in the audience who he ended up meeting her and her husband, and they had lost 4 family members to Alzheimer's disease. So for them, the disease was very personal. And as they got to know Dr. McDaniel, they said, well, we have some money that we were thinking of donating to research, and you're so inspirational and you've motivated us so much. We would love to help you." And, here I am, a nobody in this game, and he calls me up one day and he says, "John, we've got a great opportunity to run a clinical trial in Alzheimer's disease." Reg was not affiliated with any university or research organization at that time. So talk about being in the right place at the right time. I mean, that was truly, if I can think of any really lucky event in my life, it was that. And so here we are at the University of Miami. Again, it's obviously a well-known place for elderly people. Unfortunately, a lot of those folks with Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. So it turned out to be the perfect place to run this clinical trial and to give me the opportunity to lead the study as the principal investigator. And so we run the study. If you'd like to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of that, I'd love to. But I ended up running this study as the principal investigator, and Dr. Reg and a lot of our other colleagues at the university, we ended up making just some incredible discoveries that completely changed, again, not just my career, but my life. And that's why I'm here talking to you today, because I've now become like this advocate for these polysaccharides from aloe vera and rice bran. You mentioned Daiwa's products and how intimately involved I've been with those guys for basically the same time, about the last 20 years. And so here I am today talking about, these complex sugars from aloe vera and rice bran that, as you know, for the average person, completely unaware of. They have no idea what these two gifts are from Mother Nature that can help us in so many different ways with so many different healing effects. And so here I am, now no longer in academics full time. I didn't know it at the time, but the discoveries that we were making in the Alzheimer's study turned out to actually be the beginning of the end of my academic career. I, I, I thought that once we made these discoveries, I was going to have basically blank checks from NIH and Alzheimer's Association, saying, "Oh, wow, Lewis, let me give it, let us give you money to help you extend this research." And I ended up getting that much from both of those places.
Like nothing.
Exactly. Literally zero, zilch, zip, nada, nothing. And so it took a few years for me to transition out of academics into business, but that's what I've been doing today with this product that we call Daily Brain Care that came out of all that research. And so part of my passion, my obsession is not only building this business, but educating people about these complex sugars and basically kind of also pitching myself as like the sugar myth busting man, because as you know, we've heard for decades, all sugar is bad for you, right? Like there are so many people out there saying all sugar is bad for you, and they're either ignorant or they're intellectually dishonest or something in between, because they don't know what you and I know about these polysaccharides that are complex sugars. So sugar is a word that's very dependent on context in terms of not only its biochemical structure, but also its source. And so I like to not only talk about our research and these polysaccharides, but also kind of help to get people to better use the word sugar, because it really is misused and abused all the time.
Yeah, because when we talk about sugar, we think essentially of glucose. That
Right.
we're uh, so. And I'm curious. Why do you think they gave you $0 in research after the groundbreaking research you did? Could it be that they couldn't make any money on it?
You nailed it. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly hitting the nail on the head. When you look at what NIH tries to do, and I don't know, maybe it's shifting with RFK taking over Health and Human Services. I think he's still kind of new in his position. I don't know how much that's going to change really. But if you look historically at what NIH tries to do with big pharma, they want to create these products, either a drug or some sort of genetic treatment or some other kind of biotechnology where they can create a licensing arrangement to make millions or billions of dollars with. And as you and I both know, with nutrition, that's basically impossible unless you change the molecule and you synthesize it into something that's now not what Mother Nature created, but some sort of hybrid version of that. And then they go forward with their drug studies. But I totally agree and believe that that's exactly what happened. They looked at this and they said, "Nutrition, what are we going to do with that? Who cares?" And maybe Alzheimer's is the same. I mean, I don't know how well they make, or I don't know how much they make these kinds of deals with big pharma or big biotech, but I'm guessing it's kind of even if they don't do it, it's the same mentality of the people who are reviewing applications.
Well, I mean, it is fascinating that, here you have these research studies. They're funded by, us taxpayers,
Right.
and so we're funding these studies, and then we are essentially like NIH or the universities. They're giving them these, the result of these studies to these pharmaceutical companies, and then later on, make billions of dollars, on these studies that were funded by taxpayers, and taxpayers get no money from that whatsoever. We should have a cut. It's we paid for it and it's our
That's right.
property.
That's right. Amen to that. I 100% agree with you. I mean, and it's really a travesty when you think of how much money we as taxpayers have squandered on all of these drug studies. I mean, with all due respect, I've had surgery, so I've used anesthesia when I've needed to, but I don't take a drug. I mean, I'm my goal for the rest of my life is to be essentially drug free unless it's in a trauma situation where I need to be stabilized to survive. But I have no interest in taking, these typical drugs that people get put on for whatever chronic condition without recognizing the value of nutrition and exercise to hopefully prevent that stuff. So for me, it's really like, it's almost like a hole in my heart when I think about all the billions of dollars that have been wasted on all of these drug studies that essentially go nowhere. And then meanwhile, over here, we had $150,000 from this one generous family, which may sound like a lot of money, but for those of you listening who are unfamiliar with research, that's actually not a lot of money to run a clinical trial, and yet we showed so much in that one study, but I couldn't get any more money to advance it, so that is definitely a hole in my heart that I try not to be bitter about or live in the past about, but again, it literally forced me out of academics.
And so tell me a little bit about, like you mentioned, most people don't know what sugar, they just think sugar is bad, stay away from sugar. Talk to me a little bit about the different types of sugar, yeah, the different
Okay.
polysaccharide. What is a polysaccharide, and how does that relate to sugar? What is their function in the body? I mean, talk, educate me a little bit about that field.
Sure. So, probably like most people, I mean, when I took biochemistry, I learned about saccharides in general. I don't know, maybe that was a few lectures, but really all I left knowing at that time in my life was that saccharides were a source of fuel for the cell. Boy, when after I after I met Dr. Reg and got, again, this massive amount of education about what polysaccharides do, it really not only did it make me learn about what he had done, he and his colleagues, but it actually inspired me to continue learning more and more about different types of saccharides. So we have basically four types of saccharides in Mother Nature. We have monosaccharides, one molecule of sugar. The simplest form of that, of course, is fructose or high fructose corn syrup. We have disaccharides, 2 molecules of sugar. That's like table sugar, sucrose. If you're eating those, typically every day, that's probably not your best strategy for metabolic health. I'm right there with people who say, limit your sugar intake because in fairness to them, that's probably what they mean. However, the next two are the most important ones. Oligosaccharides are about 8 to 10 molecules of sugar. The most recognizable one would be in breast milk. So these oligosaccharides are very important for the baby to get from his mother or her mother to help the baby grow, to help develop its gut, to help develop its immune system, every other major organ system. These oligosaccharides are very, very important for that. And then finally, you have polysaccharides. The ones we've studied from aloe vera and rice bran, as you know, these are thousands, not 8 to 10, thousands of molecules of glucose units attached together by these very, very sophisticated glycosidic bonds. They are like 5D structures. You cannot even draw these things on a piece of paper or on a flat computer screen. They are so complex. There is nothing else in Mother Nature like them that we would consume. So, compared to amino acids, fatty acids, certainly vitamins and minerals, I mean, these things are not even remotely close in complexity to these aloe vera and rice bran polysaccharides in particular. Now, as you know, there are lots of other plants in the plant kingdom that have polysaccharides. be it mushrooms, seaweed, grains, different kinds of vegetables. I don't claim to be an expert in all the different types of polysaccharides. I don't have enough brain power to be able to study all these different phytonutrients and nutrients in nature that exist. I'm really, kind of pretty, I would say, situated in my lane at this point in my life and my career. What I think though about these polysaccharides, especially from aloe vera and rice bran, and this is I have to give Dr. Rich credit for this too, because this is the way he educated me about this, is that when you consider the coded amount of information, this library of information in these polysaccharides compared to everything else, and how our genes interpret that library of information, there is so much density and content to that library. And then the way they guide our genes and how, or I'm sorry, guide our cells and how to function, that's the reason why these things are so efficacious. Because when you compare it to, again, some other material, the amount of information that the genes interpret from, say, a vitamin compared to these polysaccharides, it's not even comparable. There's just so much more information there. And so, this is the reason why we believe this is one of our working theories that I would love to somehow prove at some point in the future. This is the reason why we believe these things are so effective. And my own belief, I've kind of taken it one step further beyond what Dr. McDaniel and I have discussed. I believe it's something beyond biochemistry. I believe there's something about resonance with these particular polysaccharides. There's got to be some alignment with these polysaccharides and our cells, be it, some type of subset within our immune system, maybe our neurons, maybe other types of cells in our, I don't know, our cardiovascular system, in our gut. There are just so many different opportunities that I wish I had the funding right now to test out some of these theories. I just believe there's something beyond biochemistry. I think it's perhaps on the physics level that would help to get us better appreciative of these just amazing sugars that Mother Nature provides for us. So again, that's kind of a working theory. I can't prove it at this point, but I do hope at some point in the future that I can do that. Now, what what do these polysaccharides do in terms of their effects? Well, I'll just talk about the ones from our lab. I mean, I don't even have to go, around the whole world. As you know, lots of things have been going on in Asia and Europe, other parts of the United States, Australia, plenty of places, plenty of scientists are looking at these polysaccharides. But just from our little lab, our little corner of the world and at the University of Miami. So, for example, in the Alzheimer's study in response to our dietary supplement, we showed clinically and statistically improvement in cognitive function in people with moderate to severe Alzheimer's disease. Doc, that's unheard of. I mean, I don't know how much you've looked into the literature in Alzheimer's, but you can compare that to the 5 FDA approved drugs for dementia. As you know, I'm sure they don't really do much of anything. Maybe if you're lucky, slow progression of the disease for a year or so, but compare that to any kind of diet, any other dietary supplement, exercise, hyperbaric oxygen, red light therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, music therapy, sound therapy, the list goes on and on. There's nothing else that has shown that in this patient population. How do you explain that incredible finding? Well, we have three basic findings in that first paper from our study. First, we showed a really significant improvement in overall immune functioning according to the CD4 to CD8 ratio. So as you know, our CD4 cells are our helper cells. Our CD8 cells are our cytotoxic cells. That ratio is very important for all of us, actually, not just folks with Alzheimer's disease. Second, we showed statistically significant reductions in TNF alpha and VEGF, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and vascular endothelial growth factor. These proteins, as you know, commonly classically looked at in heart disease and cancer. Our paper was probably the first one that showed that type of reduction, that decrease in those proteins in people with Alzheimer's disease. And then finally, we showed a 286% increase in adult stem cells, according to the CD14 cells. We know from other research, CD14s have the capacity, these pluripotent cells have the capacity to turn into neurons. Incredible. I mean, it blew when Dr. Reg and I were reading these data, when we were running the stats, it blew our minds. We could not believe we were obviously optimistic going into the clinical trial based on all of his work, but we had no idea what we would show these kinds of just incredible findings. Out of all of my papers in my scientific career, I've I got 180 something papers, I think. That's the one and only article where I submitted it for publication. I got a call from the editor of the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, Dr. Perry, and he was like, "Wow, Dr. Lewis, this paper's incredible. I'm gonna recommend we publish it as soon as I get the reviews back from the reviewers." That was the one and only time in my career that ever happened, and I was so proud. I was so just, like, on cloud 9, when we submitted that paper, as you can imagine, and if you've had patients or family members or anybody in your circle that has had this tragic disease, you know what I'm talking about because, again, compared to all the other science out there in trying all these different things to help people with Alzheimer's, I'm gonna put our work without sounding like a total narcissist, I'm gonna put our work up against anything else out there that can help people.
And that's the thing with I mean the polysaccharides. I mean it is and I think that's why the research is so challenging because they're so complex. I mean you're talking about you have thousands of molecules that are strung together, so and the structure how they're twisted, the 5D structure, it is so hard to analyze. And so that's why there's been more focus on amino acids, on fatty
Right.
acids, things that are a little bit more simple. And it was fascinating. I remember, back in the 90s when I was kind of studying this a lot, I got my Harper's biochemistry book,
Yes.
where
Yes.
I think it was the second edition or something like that, where they had a big section on the the glycogens and
Yes.
to me it was fascinating. But it's what really intrigued me was their kind of that communication aspect, how
Yes.
vital they were for cellular communication and to be able to communicate, outside environment of the cell to the inside so that the cell inside knew how to respond to what was going on. And also with the immune system cells, obviously they need to be able to communicate, recognize cells and recognize friend, foe, and when to upregulate, downregulate. And all of that is obviously communication pathways and how these polysaccharides were so vital in that area.
I totally agree with you, and I'm glad you said that because you're absolutely right. I mean, the way they create these glycoconjugates, whether it's a glycolipid or a glycoprotein, and then the way the cells talk to each other, they have like they're almost like fingers, right? Like they're almost like fingers on the outside of the cells, and then when they talk to each other, it's all because of those polysaccharides. And then you're to your point about what happens on the inside of the cell. Well, we know the mitochondria, it always gets the publicity, right? Like everybody talks about the mitochondria and how it's important to functioning and really to longevity. But yet, when you look at what happens between the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi, those polysaccharides are needed in such specific amounts in certain sequences for the cells to be able to talk to each other, for the cells to replicate themselves, for the immune cells to be surveillant, for the process of apoptosis. I mean, all these different things are so dependent on those polysaccharides like they are with about 40 or so other essential nutrients or compounds. And so it's just fascinating to me how the body is utilizing these polysaccharides in so many different ways. And to your point, this complexity issue, I agree with you 100%. Like it is literally overwhelming when you try to get all the way down to the root of the root, as they say, about what is truly going on there, because it's almost like, man, you throw up your hands and you say, well, I could go in so many different directions. Where do you begin?
Yeah, and how to analyze because you can have then the if you look if you have something string, 1,000, 5,000, whatever it is, string of molecules, and we know that it's not just the component that is important, it's the structure, the
Yep.
angles, all of these different things will then shift its ability to do what it needs to do. So how to analyze that, because here you're looking at two things that are, chemically looks exactly the same, but functionally they're completely opposite. So how to be able to analyze that is to me, is beyond, because there's so many different possibilities. There an
Exactly.
infinite amount of possibilities just within one structure. And that is what's so amazing, is that because there are so many possibilities, it is able to do so many different things, just one structure, depending on how it bends. You talk about resonance, vibration, all of these things. I mean, it is mind-boggling.
It truly is. At this point in my life, I'm so focused on growing my business, my company, but I hope at some point, I will say when, not if. So I'm putting out positive talk to the universe. When I'm able to do it, I definitely want to have the relationship with somebody. I don't even know at what university. I mean, unfortunately, nobody's really doing this kind of work at the University of Miami, but I want to get at least, maybe even through yourself. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people around the world looking into the study of glycobiology and glycomics, and I want to be able to relate with or connect with some of those folks again at some point in my future to try to help understand some of these questions that you and I are posing really rhetorically because I mean, I wouldn't even know. Like my knowledge is really more of like on the clinical practical side. I've never was a basic scientist, so I need a lot of help on that level of being able to like come to some of these conclusions. I would love to be connected with some of those folks to help me get at some of these answers at some point in the future.
So when you did your study, then, I mean, you mentioned that, we saw these effects, neural growth, and we saw, impact on the immune system. And when you're looking at, like, for Alzheimer's or dementia, you think of kind of brain inflammation, you think of infectious agents, you think of mitochondrial dysfunction, and obviously with that you have amyloid plaque that's produced, as a defense mechanism. I mean, it's an immune system response to infectious agents or an environment that's not very good. So, how, what were you, what is your conclusion? What Alzheimer and dementia is?
That's a great question. I mean, I've heard several different neurologists talk about if you've met a person with Alzheimer's, it's so heterogeneous, right? Like, exactly to your point, you mentioned some of these particular metabolic components that seem to be very integral into the pathology of the disease that it's so hard to put like to cast a net on these people in any type of homogeneous way. Like you think of comparing it to, I don't know, hypertension or maybe even dyslipidemia, things that are kind of more basic. So I don't know. I mean, as you know, there is a subset of people with Alzheimer's disease that have, and this is of course after postmortem brain autopsy, but there are, I think it's like 30%, maybe 40% of people that clinically appeared to have Alzheimer's disease, but when their brains were actually studied, they had no plaque, no tangles, no tau, nothing. And then you have another third or so percent, they do meet that clinical criteria, right? Like they have all of those morphologic features, and they were also diagnosed with the disease. And then you have another subset of people who have all of those things, but they were never diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So it's like, what, like how do you even get a handle on classifying this disease in any homogeneous way? I mean, to your point about mitochondrial dysfunction. I mean, to me, that's to me is as big of a hallmark as chronic inflammation, chronic oxidation. I mean, all these insults that we deal with over time. When you look at mitochondrial dysfunction, and then of course it's DNA decomposing over time as well. I mean, to me, this is where it go. This is where it all comes back to me from the like the clinical practical side and my view of nutrition and how to me nutrition is so important, if not the most important behavior, arguably, in terms of anything that we can control about how we live our lives, and then feeding ourselves properly to be able to delay that mitochondrial dysfunction as much as we do. I was just looking at a video. I didn't get to read the or watch the whole thing yet, but Dr. Lufkin, I don't know if you've had any interaction with him, but he just posted a video on LinkedIn a couple of days ago about branch chain amino acids actually driving insulin resistance. I thought that was very fascinating because he was talking about insulin resistance related to a lot of different things, including Alzheimer's disease, which obviously type 3 diabetes has become something that people are now are, I guess, kind of labeling as like this predisposing factor for Alzheimer's disease. And so you look at all these different things. I mean, I wish I could give you an answer, but I don't know that I can. It's just so many different things going. You even mentioned infection. I mean, we looked at in our 4th paper in the Alzheimer's study, we looked at the Th1 to Th2 ratio, and our paper was actually the first time that had been categorized in people with severe Alzheimer's disease, and we showed that these folks, out of their 6 ratios, like, all 6 of them were highly Th1 dominant, very pro-inflammatory. The one thing we didn't collect in that first study was infection, but I have a suspicion because of this now new theory or relatively newer theory about either hepatitis or herpes, even HIV, lots of different viruses and infections in general could be driving dementia or could be driving neurodegeneration. And so my theory for why these people were so Th1 dominant is that they probably had a lot of infection that we didn't even measure in that study.
So just to kind of reiterate then, so you have these polysaccharides, we know they bring intelligence to the cell, they open up communication. They also help, with the endoplasmic reticulum, they help within the cell as well. They help the activation of your natural killer cells to be able to go out and kill off things that we don't want, help with macrophages, T cell regulation, control inflammation. You talked about it was a CD14 for
Yes.
neural regrowth. So it does all these amazing things. How about the gut? Yeah, how about the digestive
Yep.
system? Because we always talk about the brain gut axis and gut lining, how that is directly connected to the blood brain barrier. Is there something that the polysaccharides do there as well?
There's no question about it. There was a really nice review paper written, I believe it was toward the end of it was either the end of 24 or the end of or the I'm sorry, the first of 25, and talking about different polysaccharides, not just from aloe vera and rice bran, but from other sources, and how they actually work as prebiotic fiber. And so I think when you were very elegantly describing not only how these structures are chained together, but also these different angles that they have in different points of them. And then imagining bits of these polysaccharides as they go through the gut and they get broken off, and then they create this very beneficial, positive prebiotic state where they're helping to drive the microbiome in a direction that we want it to, right? I mean, we know that many of our neurotransmitters are almost predominantly made in the gut. They're not actually made in the brain. They're actually made for the most part in the gut. In addition to all these different enzymes that we have there that are doing their job. So yes, I mean, they have a very, very strong impact or effect on the microbiome. No question about it.
And because I know also these, we talk about butyrates and we talk, and the polysaccharides, I know they function like, prebiotics in a way, to support then the good bacteria, then produce butyrates that then fuels the brain and fuels the nervous system. And so I mean, it's just phenomenal what these things do.
It really is. I mean, again, we could probably have at least 2 or 3 more conversations about all the different effects, that have been shown. I mean, I've just basically given you kind of a helicopter view of 2 of our papers of the 4 from the Alzheimer's study. We didn't even touch on the multiple sclerosis study, in this conversation yet, but I would be happy to come back anytime, and we could continue going down the road of all these different incredible effects. And this is why for me, like, I just look at this stuff as like, I mean, forget waiting till we're sick, right? Like, nobody wants to be sick in the first place. If you're really honest about it, you may be lazy and not doing what you're supposed to be doing to protect yourself and prevent chronic disease. But in reality, I think if people are honest with themselves, they would say, well, I don't really want to end up with diabetes or cancer or Alzheimer's or heart disease. I'm just not motivated enough. But for me, like, when you talk about like either making a dietary change or putting somebody on an exercise training program or maybe getting somebody to stop smoking or getting somebody to stop using alcohol. I mean, these are very, as you know, very intense um, issues that people have trying to get over whatever their I don't know, their if it's a block, a barrier, just something that prevents them from like taking that step of saying, okay, I need to do something so that I don't end up with, X, Y, or Z disease. But when you look at, like, taking these polysaccharides in supplemental form, most people can handle that. I mean, that was one of the interesting things that came out of my academic career at the end of it was when I compared the different types of studies that I ran, and we did some dietary studies, we did some exercise training studies, and we did these dietary supplement studies. By far, the dietary supplement studies were the easiest ones to run and the ones that we got the best compliance because they were so much easier to get people to say, "Well, here, take this powder or take this capsule," as opposed to, again, making these very significant wholesale changes. So, circling that all the way back to our more relevant point of our conversation is I look at these things regardless of how well you're eating or not, how well you're exercising or not, how well you're doing anything else in your life that can help you protect your health. When you can add these polysaccharides into your daily routine, I call them a tool in the toolbox. To me, this is such a no-brainer, no pun intended, that anybody can do and that will help prevent bad things from happening to that person in the first place, as opposed to just, kind of having this inevitability mentality saying, well, I'm going to end up with this anyway, and then I'll figure it out down the road. So for me, I just look at these things as so simple to do every day. And they're such a part of mine and my family's. I mean, my mother, my children, my wife, we all take these things every day. And I mean, maybe other than curcumin, I don't know really anything else that Mother Nature provides for us to have such incredible effects that you only need such little material. I mean, you maybe need, a few hundred milligrams to maybe a few grams per day. I mean, it's literally like from an energetic level, almost nothing.
I I'm I'm really curious about your thought in regards to, ketogenic diet because I want to go into the powders and the supplement, what which one that you would recommend. Um, but I'm curious because there's always this kind of battle. You have the paleo ketogenic,
Right.
which then cuts out a lot of these complex carbohydrates that obviously they have polysaccharides in them. They have a lot of intelligence in them. So do you feel, just from your research and your point of view, do you feel that we are hurting ourselves in some way by completely eliminating complex carbohydrates?
No question about it, and by the way, I didn't mention I've actually been eating a plant-based diet for the last 27 years. So so I definitely I don't find a lot of alignment with people who are subscribing to this idea that we should be loading up on all of this animal tissue, especially all of this fat and protein, and just completely ignoring the benefits of these complex carbohydrates. And that's what I've said for many, many, well, not me, I'd say that at least the last couple of years, like, and of course, carnivore is now the newest, I guess you could say, permutation or deviation of this whole notion of, no carbohydrate or no plants. I mean, to me, like, y- don't be so misguided or don't be able to see the forest for the trees, so to speak, when you don't even need that much, right? Like, again, we're only talking about, depending on your health status and what you're dealing with, a few hundred milligrams to maybe a few grams per day of these polysaccharides that, by the way, nobody, I mean, we have here in Miami, we have in our backyard, we have aloe vera growing, but I'm not out there every day snipping the leaves. I mean, number one, the gel is 99 point something percent water. So you couldn't possibly drink enough of that gel to get the polysaccharide content you need for a therapeutic effect. Number two, it tastes nasty. So, I mean, we've done the hard work there for you by putting it into a powder. And then as far as the rice bran, I mean, as you know, with Daiwa's material, that's a special version of the rice bran. But even if you're eating, say, brown rice 3 or 4 days a week, I mean, which I do, I still don't think you're getting enough of the rice bran to really truly have a very meaningful effect because that's probably only a couple of 100 milligrams at the most. So I would just encourage all these folks that are very much into this notion of all this protein, all this fat. Again, you're really losing an opportunity to add such a powerful tool in your toolbox by having this, in my opinion, this very narrow, like, the blinders you put on a horse, a view of nutrition. And oh, by the way, there is no research. I mean, you mentioned how complex these things are to study. Well, simultaneously, I'm not aware of any studies on either amino acids or protein or fatty acids or fat showing these kind of, let's call them immunomodulatory effects that these polysaccharides create. Those other macronutrients don't do that. I'm not aware of it. If I'd love for somebody to show me the research on it if they do, because I'm not aware of that. So you really have a very special class of material that is nothing but beneficial. I mean, I don't know of anybody who has an aloe vera allergy or sensitivity or a rice bran allergy or sensitivity. If you do, you're like a unicorn because I I don't really see it in my life or haven't for the last 20 years. So I would just say, please don't be so blinded by this almost dogma about nutrition that you think that these polysaccharides can't benefit you because they can.
And so tell me where can they find, because obviously you created this product that came out of all the research that you've done. The university didn't feel that they could make money on your research, and you knew how vital and what an impact these substances had on people's well-being, brain, immune system, autoimmune, digestive. There's so many areas of impact. So talk to me a little bit about your product. How what is it called? How can people find it? And how is it different?
Sure. Well, Daily Brain Care is the flagship product that came out of these two clinical trials that we published 7 articles from. I'd be happy to send you the papers if you'd like to read them. And again, this is my life's work. This is what I have done for almost the last 20 years, initially in academics and now in business. So I created the Dr. Lewis Nutrition brand to launch this product. I felt like I was not going to spend the rest of my life just continuing to bang my head against the wall to get people to fund nutrition research when it was not even really likely to happen. And so I pivoted. I got into business. I'm now in the dietary supplement world. I still have a voluntary position with the university. I still do some teaching. I still do some advising with undergrad and medical students. So I'm happy to keep my foot in the door there. But Doc, I'm just so proud of this work. I mean, again, this is my life's work. I put my name on the label. It's not like I'm trying to be deceptive. I went from being a scientist to now a marketer, essentially. I didn't have, some idea in the shower one night to make a lot of money. I just said, I have to take this message to a larger audience. And so my goal in my business is to touch at least 1 million lives. That's my company's goal. You can go to drlewisnutrition.com to learn more about the research, more about daily brain care, why it's unique in the space. Daily brain care, I mean, I guess, unfortunately, because it has the name brain on it, people will want to lump it into the nootropic category, which is okay. I mean, I'm not against that, but in my view of reading and looking at the labels of these so-called nootropics, almost all of them have caffeine in them, and we don't do that. This is not some caffeine-based stimulant where you feel good for a couple of hours, and then after that, you crash again. You say, "Well, what happened? I need my coffee or my tea or something." No, this is a completely different product that was developed by me and my colleagues and Dr. McDaniel at the University of Miami. So you can find us on drlewisnutrition.com. You can find us on all the typical social media channels under the Dr. Lewis Nutrition handle. We have tons of information. We have all sorts of amazing testimonial videos, product reviews. These are legit. Nobody's been paid to say anything. These are actual experiences that people have had. And I'm an open book. I mean, people can send me an email, they can call us. If the FAQs are not enough information, if somebody needs to know something specific, we'd be more than happy to help. And I would love to work with you too. I mean, we do affiliate relationships, we do wholesale relationships with physicians, chiropractors, dietitians. I mean, we have a lot of people that we work with, pharmacists. So if you'd love to work with us, I would love to work with you. I'd be so honored and grateful. But again, I'm just trying to spread a message to help people understand how these complex sugars can be of value and how they can really help just achieve health. I mean, what better thing can we do, right? I mean, I look at life as basically you have two main things that you're given. You're given your health, which you can do a lot about, and you're given time. You can't do anything about the passage of time, but you can certainly do a lot about your health. And that's where daily brain care comes in and all this research that I've conducted and what I will continue doing. This is my obsession and my passion from now until my last breath.
And like we've kind of mentioned throughout the interview, even though it's called daily brain care, it is so much more than that.
That's
Yes,
right.
you did your studies in that, but we talk about immune system modulation. We talk about cellular intelligence. We talk about digestive. I mean, neural regeneration. So there's so much more to it, and that's what's so exciting. And you're bringing in intelligence that is way beyond what anyone can really research. We can just see the effect of it, but we can't, it's hard to fully understand the true function of what all these things are doing.
That's
So,
right.
thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you, bringing this information out because I think it's vital to really understand, what these gifts in nature is giving us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Karlfeldt, for having me. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time to invest in your health and your understanding. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're dealing with ongoing or complex health concerns that haven't fully resolved, you don't have to navigate that alone. At the Karlfeldt Center, we take a comprehensive and individualized approach to care. If you'd like to explore working with us, you can learn more and schedule a consultation at thekarlfeldtcenter.com. And if you found value in this episode, I encourage you to follow the show so you don't miss future conversations. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.